I've seen a lot of things in my career, but this one left me speechless. It was a typical day at the clinic. Busy, fast-paced, the usual routine. But little did I know that in one simple moment, everything was about to change. It was late in the afternoon when he walked in. Charles, a patient I'd known for a while. His usual charm and smile were absent, replaced by an unfamiliar heaviness. He was always the kind of man who could light up a room, but today there was a shadow over him. I could see it in his eyes, the pain, the frustration. "Hey, Charles, how's everything going?" I asked, trying to break the ice, but there was something different in the air. Something wasn't right. His response came slowly, almost as if he wasn't entirely sure how to put his feelings into words. "I'm okay," he said, but I could tell he wasn't. There was a hesitation in his voice, a struggle to maintain his usual composure. As we went through the routine checkup, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more beneath the surface. And then, after what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke. "It's my wife," he said, his voice breaking. "I don't know what to do anymore. I've made a mistake, and now it feels like I've ruined everything." I could feel the weight of his words hang in the room. It was clear this wasn't just a medical issue. This was something much deeper, something personal. Charles wasn't the type of man to share his struggles easily, yet here he was, opening, up in a way I had never seen before. But just as I was about to offer some words of comfort, the door opened. And there she was, his wife. The woman who had no idea that the man she trusted, the man she loved, was sitting in front of me, burdened by a secret that could tear everything apart. She walked in with a sense of purpose, yet her eyes held a trace of confusion. At first, she didn't seem to notice the tension that had filled the room, but it didn't take long for her to sense it. Charles's face turned a shade darker, his hands fidgeting nervously with the edge of his shirt as he avoided her gaze. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice a mixture of concern and curiosity. She had no idea, no inkling that what was about to unfold would change their lives forever. I watched the scene unfold, unsure of how to proceed. What was I supposed to say? How could I, as a medical professional, be caught in the middle of something so personal, so fragile? The line between my role as a doctor and as a witness to an unraveling relationship had suddenly blurred. "Yeah, everything's fine," Charles muttered quickly, but it was clear to anyone who had been paying attention that he was lying. The weight of his words from earlier still hung in the air, and I could see her staring at him, waiting for some sort of clarity. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. She stood there, arms crossed, waiting for Charles to say something, anything, to reassure her. But instead, Charles stood up, his knees almost giving way as he did. The man who had always been the picture of confidence was now visibly shaken. Then, without warning, he turned to her. His voice cracked, raw with emotion, as he finally spoke the truth that had been eating away at him for so long. "I've been unfaithful, and I don't know how to fix this," Charles confessed, the words slipping out of him like a painful truth that had been buried far too deep. Her face changed in an instant. The softness that had once been there was replaced with disbelief, hurt, and anger. For a moment, I could see the shock freeze her, as if she had heard those words but couldn't quite process them. Her eyes darted between me and Charles, a silent question hanging in the air. Was I a part of this? Was I the one who had pushed him to confess? But before I could even think of offering any kind of explanation, she turned away, her face crumpling in pain. I had never seen a person break like that before. The woman who had trusted him completely now felt like her world was shattering around her, piece by piece. The room fell into a suffocating silence as his wife, now struggling to hold back tears, took a few steps back. Her eyes welled up, but her composure barely held on as she wiped away the first tear that escaped. Charles stood there, a man broken by the weight of his own guilt, unsure of what to do next. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely audible yet piercing. "Why would you do this to me? After everything we've built, After everything we've gone through. Her words were like daggers, each one a reminder of the trust she had placed in him, the love they had shared, and the life they had built together. It wasn't just a betrayal of her heart. It was a betrayal of everything they had ever been. I stood in the background, feeling the pain of the moment, but also knowing there was little I could do. This was their fight, their struggle. I was nothing more than a bystander, forced into this intimate scene by the nature of my profession. But even as a doctor, I knew this was more than just a broken heart. It was a man at war with himself, with his decisions, with his own identity. "I don't have an excuse," Charles stammered. His eyes were filled with remorse, but his hands trembled as if he wanted to reach out to her, to pull her back, to undo the damage he had done. "I messed up. I'm so sorry." But sorry wasn't enough. I could see the devastation in her eyes. No apology, no explanation, no confession would ever erase the hurt she felt. And as much as she may have loved him, there was a deep, fundamental fracture in their relationship now. A wound that couldn't be healed with words alone. "You don't get to just say sorry," she snapped, now visibly angry, her voice rising with each word. "You don't get to just destroy me and then expect everything to be okay because you said sorry." I watched her retreat to the corner of the room, her back turned, her shoulders shaking as she struggled to regain control over her emotions. I could see the inner turmoil raging inside her, the fight between wanting to scream, wanting to cry, and perhaps wanting to understand why he had done this in the first place. Charles stood there, defeated. His body seemed to shrink in on itself. The man who once walked into the room with his usual swagger, now reduced to nothing more than a shell. He had broken her, and he knew it. There. The silence that followed felt like a weight, pressing down on everyone in that room. There was no right way to fix what had been broken, no magic words that could undo the damage. As I looked at Charles, I could see the depth of his regret. He was trapped in his own remorse, a man lost in the consequences of his own choices. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, his voice barely above a whisper as he reached out, his hand trembling. "Please, don't leave me like this. I know I've hurt you, but I still love you. I need you to believe that. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." You know, after that small step in the garage, things didn't magically go back to normal. I think people expect that. Like once you talk, the pain just disappears. But it doesn't. It lingers. It echoes. We still had awkward moments. Still had long silences over dinner. Still avoided certain topics like landmines. But slowly, over time, something started to shift. Not in big ways, but in tiny cracks of light. He started asking questions, not many, and not always at the right time, but questions like, "What are you working on these days?" Or, "Who reads this stuff?" And I'd answer. Sometimes he'd nod, sometimes he wouldn't. But he was trying, and I could feel that. One night, I got home late from a reading I had done in the city. It was a small event, nothing fancy. But to me, it mattered. I had read a piece about fathers and sons. Fictional, but not really. You know what I mean? I came in through the back door, thinking everyone was asleep. But there he was, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, just staring at nothing. And he said, without looking at me, "Was it about me?" I sat down, slowly, took a breath, and I said, "Parts of it." He didn't say anything for a long time, just nodded, then finally said, "I see." That's all. But that moment felt bigger than any apology, because what he was really saying was, "I know I've hurt you, and I'm starting to understand why." The thing is, my dad never had a dad who listened, or talked, or asked him what he wanted. His father was hard, cold, distant. So my dad taught himself how to be a provider, how to be a wall no one could break. That's how he learned to love. Quietly, sacrificially. So when I came along and I started breaking the mold, it felt like betrayal to him. Not because I meant to hurt him, but because it reminded him of the freedom he never had. I started realizing something important during that time. Sometimes the people who hurt us are carrying hurts of their own that they've never unpacked. And when we clash, it's not always anger. Sometimes it's grief. Grief for the connection they never knew how to build. There were days when I still felt like giving up. Days when I questioned if we could ever really understand each other. But I kept going, kept sharing my work, kept asking about his projects, kept showing up. Because love isn't loud, it's consistent. I think we expect healing to be a dramatic gesture, a teary-eyed confession, a breakthrough moment. But sometimes, healing looks like sitting in the same room, in silence, and staying. It looks like two people figuring out how to be in each other's lives without pretending anymore. We're in a better place now. Not perfect. Not even close. But better. A few months ago, he came to one of my readings, sat in the back, arms crossed, just watching. When it ended, I wasn't sure what he thought. I was nervous, honestly. But as I was packing up, he came over and said something I'll never forget. He said, "Your words make people feel things. That's a gift. I didn't see that before." And I stood there, frozen. Because in that moment, I didn't hear just his words. I heard everything he'd been trying to say for years but didn't know how. I heard, "I'm proud of you." I heard, "I see you." I think that's all we really want deep down. To be seen. Not just for what we do, but for who we are, for what we carry, for what we dream. My dad and I, we still clash sometimes. We still walk on old battle lines from time to time. But there's a new kind of respect now. A quiet understanding. He knows I didn't reject him. I just needed to become me. And I see him more clearly now, too. Not just as dad, but as a man. A flawed, complicated, quietly courageous man who did the best he could with what he had. You know, there's something heartbreaking about realizing your parents are human. But there's something beautiful in it, too. Because once you stop expecting them to be perfect, you can start loving them for real. Not for what you wish they were, but for who they are. If you've had a moment like mine, where something happened that cracked the foundation between you and someone you love, I want you to know this. It doesn't have to be the end. It might hurt. It might take time. It might never look the way it did before. But if you both want it, if even one of you is willing to keep showing up, something honest can grow in the place where the hurt used to live. Not perfect, but real. And sometimes, real is even better. I'm heading to visit him now. We don't talk about everything. Some things stay unsaid, but that's okay. What matters is that we're still showing up. And sometimes, that's everything. It happened between me and my dad, and it changed everything. But maybe it needed to.